I'm sure you all know this bag. It's the Louis Vuitton Alma here in the Damier pattern, but it's also very popular in the Louis Vuitton Monogram Canvas. There are many different versions of this bag. There have been many artistic reinterpretations of it. And today I'm going to look closer into the origins of the bag, because there's actually an interesting rumor around it. It is said that Louis Vuitton created this bag, or a bespoke version of it, for Gabrielle Chanel. Yes, you've heard me correctly. I'm talking here about a potential collaboration between Louis Vuitton and Coco Chanel. So I'm going to see if I can confirm this rumor, and I'm also going to show you a link to another bag brand, Hermès. So let's look into the details. Before I start with these details, I would like to say that this is a non-sponsored video. I'm just sharing my personal opinion and my research here. Let's quickly discuss the features of this bag. It's actually one of the most popular bags by Louis Vuitton. It was launched in 1992, and it is quite a structured bag. It's a so-called dome-shaped bag, and it has this signature zip from one side to the other. It has this rounded top, and it has these signature rolled handles called torrons. This is very common for the Alma. There are also different versions of the handle, but usually it's this rolled handle. This Alma bag most often comes with this leather key tag, also with a padlock, and sometimes also with a shoulder strap. This was introduced in 2010 when the Alma was launched in the Bébé version. And today the Alma comes in many different sizes. So I already mentioned the Bébé. This is the Petit model, the PM. Then you also have MM, Moyen model, mid-sized model, and Grand model, GM, so the big model. I also saw an XL size. I also saw a backpack, an Alma backpack. And usually it looks like this. This is the base form. Sometimes it comes without these features. And there are also Alma bags that have features like, for example, details from the trunks. There's the Alma trunk, which has basically a clasp here to also reference the iconic Louis Vuitton trunks. So initially in 1992, when the bag was launched, it was launched in the Monogram Canvas, then also the Damier soon followed, and then there were other versions which you can still buy, for example, the AP leather version or the Monogram Vernis. And one of the most memorable artistic reinterpretations was probably the multicolor monogram from the early 2000s, and also the Monogram Miroir, which is this monogram stamped on vinyl in metallic colors like gold or silver. You probably remember in 2006 Paris Hilton and Kim Kardashian were really big fans of that Monogram Miroir bag. In its essence, the Alma is a dome-shaped bag, and this is nothing unique only to Louis Vuitton. A lot of other brands also sold or sell dome-shaped bags. What is a dome-shaped bag? I already mentioned it before. It's this signature structure. It's a rounded top, so we have the dome basically, also the zip that connects one side to the other. And in the case of Louis Vuitton, I mentioned it before, we have these signature rounded handles, the torrent handles, and this is basically the standard handle of the Alma. But as I said before, there are also other interpretations or versions. For example, if we look at the Double Jeu Neo Alma, it has these thick, flat handles, but I would say the torrent is probably the standard handle for the Alma. I also have one quote by the company Louis Vuitton about the origins of this bag. I do have to say I can't 100% confirm it because it's not on their website anymore. Maybe it was there and then it was taken off, because a lot of forum threads and also articles reference this quote. But I still want to read it out to you because I think it gives you a very good idea how this bag was created. The quote says, "The Alma's ancestry can be traced to the end of the 19th century, with its most direct forebears taking the rather humble form of a linen bag and a night bag, two simple canvas pouches designed to keep trunk drawers tidy. In 1901, their functions merged, giving rise to the steamer bag, the essential companion of transatlantic passengers. Its elegant trapezoidal design concealed discrete compartments to separate clean linen from that already worn." Now, what does this actually mean? It means that until Louis Vuitton launched the steamer bag, it was common for transatlantic travelers to have two separate bags. One was for clean clothes and one was for dirty laundry. So they basically put it in one, so that you don't have this separation, you don't have to carry or worry about the two bags, and they created the steamer bag. Why am I bringing up the steamer bag if we actually talk about the Alma? The reason is that the Alma may have been created in a similar fashion as the Speedy. As I said in my video about iconic bags and their celebrity godmothers, the Speedy was created for Audrey Hepburn, and it was actually a smaller sized version of a travel bag, the Keyball. And similarly, the Alma is basically the result of a smaller version of the steamer bag. But it doesn't go immediately from steamer to Alma, there were some steps in between, and I already mentioned this rumor. It is said that in 1925, Gaston Louis Vuitton, who was the grandson of Louis Vuitton, the founder, created a bespoke version of the bag for Coco Chanel. She wanted a bag which was similar to the steamer bag, but she wanted it smaller so it's easier to carry the bag around in the city. According to multiple articles, there was also an interlocking C on that design. I could not confirm this. I have to say I'm very careful about confirming this because first of all, Louis Vuitton themselves doesn't talk about it. Needless to say, Chanel doesn't talk about this. And also many of these articles don't list sources, or it seems that they just say what another article said. And as you know, when I do research, I always look into the sources. So we have nothing that confirms this 100%. But it is possible because we know also other designers bought products from Louis Vuitton for their personal use. So I would not say it's completely unlikely that this happened. But again, we have to be careful what we confirm. So according to these sources, this was a reduced version, a smaller version of the steamer bag. Let's say maybe there was the CC logo on it or not, we don't know. And then there's another story closely linked to it because many articles claim that Coco Chanel gave official permission that Louis Vuitton can produce a version of this bag for the masses from 1934 onwards. Again, there is no written proof about this. I don't know where the authors found that official permission. Maybe there's something in the archives which I don't know about. If you know more about this, please let me know in the comments below. But just to briefly sum this up, it is likely that Coco Chanel turned to Louis Vuitton for her needs regarding bags. Also, when we think about the time, 1925 was not yet the time when Coco Chanel went into the full-on production of her famous bags. We know that the Chanel 255 went into production in the 1950s. There were some bags before that, but it was at a different scale. So it's not unlikely that she wanted a bag for herself and she turned to Louis Vuitton and said, these are the requirements, you have the steamer bag, can you make it for me? So not completely unlikely, but not 100% confirmed in writing. And one other thing, it's quite obvious why neither Louis Vuitton nor Chanel publicly talk about this collaboration or that Coco Chanel turned to Louis Vuitton, because on the one hand, Louis Vuitton will not credit Chanel with the idea or a collaboration for one of their most iconic bags. And on the other hand, Chanel will also not say, yeah, we are actually behind that design, or we helped Louis Vuitton design that bag. Why didn't they do it themselves? So from a marketing perspective, I was not surprised that I could not find more concrete information. We have the steamer bag from the beginning of the 20th century. Then we have the Squire bag from the 1930s. And then afterwards, there were multiple iterations of that bag as well. In 1950, Louis Vuitton launched the Marceau bag, which looks very, very structured and actually more, I would say, rectangular or geometric than the Alma. Also, Dora Maar, who was the muse of Pablo Picasso, owned this Marceau bag. And then this Marceau bag underwent another reiteration, and in 1955 a slimmer version of this Squire or Marceau bag was launched, which was called Champs-Élysées. Some experts say that these bags were made from plain canvas, and what we can also see is that Louis Vuitton very often uses street names for their bag designs. So for example, we have Champs-Élysées, we have Marceau, and this Marceau is already a hint to why the Alma bag is called Alma, because when you zoom in on the map of Paris, you see the metro station Marceau Alma. And there are actually two stories about this, and I think I remember that I even saw both of them on the Louis Vuitton website. So the first one is that the name comes from the Place de l'Alma. This is where the Avenue Montaigne meets the Seine River. I looked at that square, this Place de l'Alma, and my only explanation would be that there are certain buildings or architectural elements that inspired the Alma bag. Likely because we have this rounded dome-shaped top. Some articles say it's Art Deco related or inspired, but just from the pictures I could not really see the link. I actually think it's more likely that it's the second source of inspiration. And we don't have to go too far because this Place de l'Alma is right next to the Pont de l'Alma, the Alma Bridge. You may know this bridge because there's also a sad story relating to this bridge because it's linked to the tunnel where Princess Diana passed away in the late 1990s. And today this is a steel bridge. But this bridge was built in the 19th century. It was built to commemorate the victory of the French and the British over the Russians in the Crimean War. It was the battle at the river Alma. So Napoleon III had this bridge built. So when we analyze the Alma bag, we can't look at the current Pont de l'Alma. We have to look at the original one because the current one was built in the 1970s. The original bridge was severely damaged. But when we look at the original bridge drawings, for example, we can see the arches. They were quite characteristic, and I think it's very likely that the inspiration for the rounded top of the bag actually came from those arches. So that's why I rather support this second story of the Pont de l'Alma influencing the design rather than just the square, but I think those two are linked, so both of them have that justification. I mentioned a potential link to Chanel, but there's also definitely a link also to Hermès, because I mentioned in my other video about the history of Hermès that Émile Maurice Hermès traveled to Canada. He was the grandson of the founder, and he got inspired by the closures of the hoods of military cars because he discovered the zip or zipper, which he then brought to Europe, and he incorporated this into his Bolide bag, which is also a dome-shaped bag. And why do I bring this up? It's not that these houses necessarily all copied each other. It is similar to what I said in my other videos. All of them underwent similar developments. They were all trunk makers. Then they looked into making other travel goods, also women's handbags. They experimented with similar materials, obviously also shapes. And Émile Maurice launched the Bolide bag in 1923 with that zip. So maybe this was at the same time as Louis Vuitton was already experimenting with this zip closure, or they saw it from Hermès and incorporated it as a closure into their bag. So don't get me wrong here, I don't want to say that Louis Vuitton copied the Hermès design, but these are kind of like parallel developments at the same time. But I would like to come back to the rumors involving Coco Chanel because it seems that so many people talk about it. There are so many articles, there are even dedicated forum threads. And I found quite an interesting thread and a quote in a forum in purseblog.com, which I found really interesting, and I would like to share it with you because it also shows that maybe there was more than just a rumor to this whole story. The user says that in the book Louis Vuitton City Bags, A Natural History, on page 124, it says, then in 1934, the grandson of Louis Vuitton, Gaston Louis, made a triangular-shaped bag which he called the Squire. The legend says that the bag is inspired by a bag made for a famous fashion designer in 1925. A bag fully made in canvas, 45 centimeters long, with a base similar to the steamer on which the interlaced CC was visible. This travel bag was found in the archives and was redesigned to create the Alma, now bearing the signatures of the Louis Vuitton brand. So this is a paraphrased quote from the book. The user also mentioned that in the digital version of the book, I assume this is the version that they read, there was no mention of Gabrielle Chanel in the same chapter, but I find it interesting. They say famous fashion designer, then they refer to the CC, so maybe there really is more to this rumor than we would think. But there's one thing that I need to clarify here. I also have to say I find this a bit annoying because it shows how much clickbait is going on and that a lot of people don't check the sources or don't put the simplest things together, because just by looking at the time frame, we see that this claim, the Alma bag was created for Coco Chanel, doesn't work, because the Alma was launched in 1992 and potentially there was the redesign of a bag by Louis Vuitton for a customer, maybe Coco Chanel, in 1925. So we see just from that perspective this doesn't work. So if there was a bag designed for Coco Chanel, it's not the Alma as we know it today. It was one of these predecessor bags that in the long run, step by step, led to the design and launch of the Alma bag in 1992. But the speculation about this Chanel-Louis Vuitton collaboration didn't stop there. In 2014, for the first collection of women's creative director Nicolas Ghesquière, a lot of people saw links between the two houses because there was an Alma bag, some call it Neo Marceau, with a quilted pattern, which is also called matelassé pattern, or in the case of Louis Vuitton, when you look at their website, they call it maletage crisscrossing pattern. So this is a quilted pattern, and a lot of people said this is a nod to Gabrielle Chanel. Some people took it even further and said there's definitely a link to Mademoiselle Chanel when we look at the colors, because we have the crisscross pattern in red and beige, some said red and white. And as I mentioned in my video about Coco Chanel's passion for white, some of her favorite colors were actually red and white. So I do have to say, the white I don't really see in the bag, because for me it's clearly beige. And then also Louis Vuitton released in their information about this collection that this actually referenced the crisscross pattern of the Louis Vuitton heritage trunks. So I don't know, maybe this is something that people really want to see, so they want to see it confirmed that this was a subtle nod by Nicolas Ghesquière to Mademoiselle Chanel, and then also this pattern of the trunks was just the cover story of it. I leave this up to you to judge. Let me know in the comments below what you think about this. Louis Vuitton currently still sells the Alma in this quilted pattern. I found a black version and the navy version on the website. And I have one last piece of speculation around this potential collaboration between Chanel and Louis Vuitton. It relates to the campaign by Chanel in 2011 for their Mademoiselle bag. It is a structured bag which could reference the Alma, the Marceau, the Squire, whichever of these models. It was advertised in a campaign with Blake Lively, and again a lot of people said this was now a nod, now the other way around, from Chanel to Louis Vuitton about this story from 1925 when Louis Vuitton maybe created the bag for Gabrielle Chanel. But now I'm really curious about what you think about this. Have you heard about these rumors? Do you believe them, or do you have more concrete information about this? Please let me know in the comments below. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps me to produce this weekly content for you. If you're interested in more fashion-related articles, you can head over to thepinklookbook.com, and you can also check out my fashion label Pelagona if you like. If you enjoyed this video, I recommend that you watch my other video about the 7 basic fashion facts that you need to know about Coco Chanel. Thank you very much for watching this video, and see you in the next one.